Waking up between 3 am and 5 am is not an accident. It is a signal your mind and body is sending you. While most people continue to sleep in and miss this unique opportunity, you can use this sacred hour to think deeply about your life. Here as the bottom line, if you are not utilizing this time, you are wasting your potential. When I first started waking up at this time, I found it uncomfortable. I would lie in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wishing I could go back to sleep. But over time, I realized one thing: those quiet hours are not a curse, but a gift that many people never receive. And I realized that instead of agonizing, I should learn to use this time to get into myself and my thoughts. Initially, I thought I was waking up because of stress or anxiety. But the more I immersed myself in those early mornings, the more I realized that they are not a random occurrence. In this moment, the world is quiet and you are alone with yourself. There are no outside distractions and it becomes an opportunity for deep inner work. Instead of panicking and grabbing the phone or watching TV, people tend to try to fill the void. They look for distractions so they don't have to hear their inner voice. But if we learn to use this time for reflection, we would discover answers that remained hidden during the day. Waking up at 3 am can be frightening because at that moment there is no way to hide behind the hustle and bustle of daily life. Silence exposes your thoughts and feelings. I realized that this is more than just an inconvenience. It is a moment when my mind finally gets the attention it has been waiting for. It is moments like this when you are confronted with something that really bothers you, but you don't always want to admit it. How often throughout the day do we avoid things we don't like? We get distracted, we run away from problems, and they pile up. At 3 am, there is nowhere to run away to. You come face to face with yourself, and that is when your mind starts to reveal important truths to you. I used to hate those night wakings. I tried to close my eyes, to go back to sleep, but I couldn't. I felt that something was wrong, and later I realized I wasn't waking up because of stress or tension. I was waking up because there were unresolved issues in my life that I was avoiding. Sometimes it was conversations I didn't want to have, or situations where I wasn't being honest with myself. Waking up at 3 am was the moment when I could no longer avoid the truth. These mornings reinforce what you are trying to hide, and if you address yourself honestly, you can begin to make changes. When I stopped resisting these awakenings and allowed myself to reflect, everything changed. I started asking myself questions that I used to be afraid to answer. Why did I wake up right now? What is troubling me? What needs to change in my life? I began to answer myself honestly, and in that process I found answers that seemed to be out of reach during the day. Those early mornings are an opportunity, not a curse. It is a chance to be honest with myself and begin real growth. Yes, it can be uncomfortable, but it is in these hours that clarity comes that remains hidden behind the noise of everyday life. I began to use this time to ask myself important questions and draw deep conclusions about my future. Instead of filling the morning silence with meaningless activities, I learned to use it for deep reflection. This moment became a time of self-discovery for me as I began to honestly evaluate my habits, relationships, and life goals. If you've ever woken up at 3 am and couldn't sleep, try to see it as an opportunity rather than a nuisance. Those hours can change your life if you are open to coming face to face with what is bothering you. Admit to yourself what needs to change and use this time for real growth. Every waking up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. is not an accident. It has a signal from your mind and body. While other people continue to sleep, you get a unique opportunity to be alone with yourself. At this time, the world is quiet and you may realize that your life is not quite in line with your values. It as a sign that something needs your attention. When I first started waking up at 3:00, I could feel the world around me getting loud and hectic. But over time, I realized that this moment is not a punishment, but a gift. It has a chance to be honest with myself. It took me a long time to realize why I was waking up at this particular time. I thought it was an accident or that anxiety and stress were bothering me. But then I realized it wasn't just random thoughts. It was something deeper. It was a moment when I realized that I wasn't living authentically, that I was avoiding difficult conversations and decisions that needed to be made. I began to see waking up at 3:00 as an opportunity to do a reset, to reevaluate my goals and actions, to look at my life honestly and openly. And with each such awakening, I began to change my life. When you wake up at 3:00 a.m., your mind is working at full capacity. At this hour, the thoughts that enter your mind are the most real and unfiltered. These are the very thoughts that you have been suppressing throughout the day, trying not to think about them. Instead of letting these thoughts roll around in my head endlessly, I started writing them down in a journal. It was incredibly powerful. By writing things down, I was turning chaos into clarity. After all, journaling is more than just recording events. It has a way to make sense of emotions and thoughts that we usually hide from ourselves. One of the most powerful moments I experienced was when I was going through a relationship breakup. I was lying in the dark, feelings of depression overwhelming me. My mind was flitting between doubts. Did I do the right thing? Or am I missing my potential? Anxiety was building. But when I started journaling, I realized it wasn't just stress. It was fear of what I was avoiding. As I wrote down my thoughts, I saw the same fears and problems I'd been avoiding recurring instead of addressing them. By writing it down, I began to face a reality that I had previously been unable to recognize. And this honesty became an important step in my growth. When you don't want to write down your thoughts, it most often means you don't want to face the truth. But here's the paradox. If you don't face it, it will all continue to control you. And that is the power of journaling at 3 a.m. You take control of the situation. You allow yourself to see what is really bothering you. It became a transformational process for me. The more I wrote down my thoughts, the more I realized what was holding me back and what was really bothering me. Keeping a journal at 3 a.m. became a way for me to get to the heart of my anxieties. I realized that most of my problems were due to the fact that I wasn't acting in the areas where I should have. Having written these thoughts down, I could no longer ignore them. And here is where the exciting truth comes in. If you wake up with recurring thoughts, it is a sign that you are avoiding taking action. When you write things down, you stop lying to yourself. By writing these thoughts down, you regain clarity and take control of your life. It becomes a tool of self-discovery that allows you to see what really drives you. Often when we wake up in the middle of the night, we are overcome with panic, anxiety, and pointless ruminations about what we don't have time to do or what the future holds. Instead of letting these thoughts dissipate, I started using these moments to create a clear to-do list. More than just a task list, it as a way to regain control of my day, organize my thoughts, and figure out what really matters. By writing down all the tasks, I gradually eliminated the chaos in my mind. Anything that seemed hopelessly complicated became manageable. When we put off tasks and wallow in anxiety, it is often because we are afraid to face our fear. We put off tasks because we think they're way too hard or complicated. But when I started making a to-do list, things became much clearer. By writing the tasks down, I could see them on a realistic scale and realize that they were doable. This important step to taking control and starting to move forward. Things become so much easier when we stop avoiding and start taking action. Creating a to-do list has been my salvation from pointless worrying. I used to wake up and drown in worry about what I hadn't done or didn't have time for. My mind was overflowing with questions, but with the help of my to-do list, I stopped feeling chaotic. I began to see that tasks can be accomplished step by step instead of thinking of them as something overwhelming. It really helps to stop stress and anxiety. When you write down your thoughts and tasks, you put them into tangible form and things become much clearer. When you keep putting off tasks and avoiding action, it becomes part of your stress. The more you avoid, the harder it becomes to take the first step. But here is the truth: if you don't start taking action today, it will never come later. So, the next time you wake up at 3 a.m., don't stay in a panic. Write down everything that is troubling you and allow yourself to see what you really need to do. By writing down your thoughts, you take control and possibly start your journey to change. If you wake up at 3 a.m., it is a sign that your mind is trying to tell you that it is time to get a grip. But instead of making a random to-do list, you need to be strategic. I recommend dividing your list into 2 parts: mandatory tasks and aspirational tasks. The mandatory tasks are the ones that really need to get done that day. They are usually a small list of high-priority tasks that move you forward in your career, personal goals, or well-being. Desirable tasks are those that are not as important, but completing them would be helpful too. This system helps you prioritize properly and not feel like a failure if you don't get everything done. Waking up at 3 a.m. gives you unique clarity to highlight what is really important and what is just noise. This allows you to focus on what will have the biggest impact instead of throwing energy around. Don't just stop at the task list. Go deeper and ask yourself, why do I need to do this? Why is this important to me? What is the purpose of each task on my list? This can transform your to-do list from just a productivity tool to a personal growth tool. When you wake up at 3 a.m. worrying about a project or task, write it down and ask yourself questions. This kind of self-reflection turns your to-do list into more than just a set of tasks. It allows you to connect your actions to your values and long-term goals. This is how your list becomes a guide for personal growth, not just a plan for the day. When you don't make a to-do list, you are adrift, reacting to circumstances. Waking up in the middle of the night, your mind tells you that you are losing control. Making a list during those hours is a chance to regain that control and bring clarity back into your life. I vividly remember how I used to wake up at 3 a.m. with thoughts of things I should have done but didn't. These thoughts would haunt me and I would get overwhelmed, not knowing where to start. But once I started making lists in those early hours, everything changed. I no longer dreaded the day because I knew what I needed to do and why. It gave me a sense of purpose and direction that I was missing when my thoughts were wandering without focus. When you wake up at 3 a.m., you are hit with absolute silence. This is the moment when you seem to be the only person awake. At first it is frightening because in silence we are confronted with ourselves and our thoughts, but silence is a gift. It is one of the few times of day when the world doesn't demand anything of you. No calls, no messages, no notifications. For most people, silence becomes uncomfortable because they avoid facing their own doubts, insecurities, and failures. It is easier to fill the space with noise, distracted by social media, music, or TV. However, when you wake up at 3 a.m., the world is quiet. It is a moment where you can escape from yourself, and it is in this silence that a tremendous power is hidden. It clears away distractions and forces you to face what you normally avoid dealing with, yourself. Most people fear silence because it forces them to face their insecurities and worries. But once I learned to appreciate that silence, I began to see it as a space for reflection rather than an unbearable discomfort. In it, I was able to ask myself important questions that I hadn't asked myself during a busy day. In this state, I began to reflect not only on the day-to-day, but also on who I was and where I was going. One night while sitting in silence, I realized that this moment and this silence was my opportunity for true self-reflection. My problems, unresolved issues and worries seemed heavy, but through this silence I saw that it was a space for growth. Every awakening in the middle of the night is a chance for growth. Yes, it can be uncomfortable, but discomfort is where change happens. When you wake up at night and the world is silent, it is a chance to reflect on who you are becoming and where you are headed. In the silence, you can find answers to questions you don't normally hear because of the hustle and bustle of everyday life. I am happy with where I am, but I still keep avoiding one important thing. Why am I afraid of it? Silence has given me a space for reflection that I don't usually find in the hustle and bustle. And guess what? The answers don't come from social media or endlessly watching shows. They come from silence, from just sitting and listening to your mind. Most people fear loneliness because it forces them to face their inner demons, the fears, doubts, and failures they've tried to suppress. But here is the truth. These demons don't disappear just because you ignore them. They lay hidden, but the silence of 3 a.m. brings them to the surface, and it is not something to run away from, but instead something to embrace, because once you face it, growth begins. Solitude, especially in the silence of the night, is a moment when you can be completely honest with yourself. It is a rare opportunity when there are no people around whose expectations can influence your thoughts, and there is no pressure. You are simply being, and in that simple being you discover new truths about yourself that you wouldn't otherwise recognize. Silence strips away everything superficial and forces you to face reality. Think about it. When was the last time you really sat alone with your thoughts, with nothing to distract you? It has probably been a long time, right? We live in a world that constantly demands our attention, where we are constantly distracted. Waking up at 3 a.m. is a reminder from the universe to slow down, to stop running away from your thoughts and just sit with them. This is the moment to embrace loneliness and to make things really real. Accepting loneliness is not just a way to distract yourself or wander off in your thoughts. It is a conscious reflection. Use this quiet time to ask yourself the hard questions. What are you avoiding in your life? What is holding you back? Why aren't you taking action on the things you know you need to do? Silence forces you to face the truth you've been avoiding, and that's where growth begins. In my life, the moments of solitude at 3 a.m. have been the most profound moments for self-reflection. I realized important things that I wouldn't have realized if I had filled that moment with something distracting. I made decisions in those quiet hours that changed my path. The silence gave me clarity and allowed me to see what was really important. But here's the truth. Most people will never experience this because they are afraid to be alone with their thoughts. They fill the silence with anything, TV, podcasts, social media, to avoid the discomfort of loneliness. But those who are willing to sit in silence and face themselves get the most value. So the next time you wake up at 3 a.m., don't reach for your phone or try to distract yourself. Sit in the silence, embrace it. Let your mind wander and your thoughts flow. You may be surprised at how far ahead you get. Because while everyone else is sleeping, you're getting to know the most important person in your life, yourself. When you wake up at 3 a.m., your body is still asleep, but it feels tense, heavy, anxious. You may feel like just lying there and hoping sleep will return. But what if you use this moment to tune out your body? A simple stretch can dramatically change your physical, mental, and emotional state. Many people underestimate how much tension builds up in our bodies. A good stretch at this time is a reset that you didn't even expect, but that your body actually needs. Here's the reality. When you lie still for a long time, your muscles tense up, your circulation slows down, and your body becomes a bit stale. Stretching activates the body, sending fresh oxygen to the muscles and improving blood flow where it is most needed. I used to ignore my body as signals, feeling anxious, both physically and mentally. I would just lie there staring at the ceiling, hoping sleep would return. But once I started incorporating stretching into my morning wake-ups, everything changed. I would get out of bed, do a few simple stretching exercises, and feel the tension built up overnight just dissolve. Stretching became an important tool for me to get back to normal, not only physically, but mentally as well. Many people think that stretching is only for yoga enthusiasts or athletes, but in fact, it is beneficial for all of us, especially at times when the body and mind need to recover and reboot. But here's the truth. Your body is screaming for attention, especially if you spend all day in front of a computer, tucked away on your phone, or sitting for hours without moving. Waking up at 3 a.m. is your body's way of saying, "Hey, you've been ignoring me, let us fix that." There is something contradictory about our society. Mental strength and productivity are praised, yet we often ignore the body until it fails us. We keep moving through discomfort, ignore the tension, and then wonder why we feel depleted. Our bodies are often taken for granted until they start to break down. Stretching at 3 a.m., when the world is still sleeping, is a way to reconnect with your body and give it the care and attention it deserves. And here's the kicker. When you stretch your body, your mind benefits too, because the two are deeply connected. When I started getting up early and doing stretches, it became more than just a physical release. It became a ritual. I realized that stretching is not just about relaxing the muscles, but also relaxing the mind. As I stretched, I could feel the tension of the day, stress, and mental clutter begin to fade away. It was almost a meditative state. I was stretching my body, and in doing so, my mind was creating space for clarity and peace. Think about it. You lay awake, your muscles are tense, your blood circulation is slow. How can you hope to tackle the challenges of the day if your body isn't ready? Stretching is a form of self-esteem, a way of saying to yourself, I am going to take care of my body so it can support me in whatever comes next. When you stretch at 3 a.m., there is a mental shift. You go from feeling anxious and worried, when it feels like the day is ruling you, to feeling in control of your body and mind. This turns discomfort into something productive that benefits you. And honestly, there is something almost magical about stretching in the dark and quiet when the whole world is asleep. Just you, your body, and stillness. No distractions. The practical side, you don't need to do a full-blown workout at 3 a.m. Start small. Simple stretches like stretching your arms above your head, rotating your shoulders, or touching your toes can work wonders. I start with full body stretches, stretching my arms as high as possible, feeling the spine stretch. Then I move on to gentle rotations of the neck, shoulders, and stretching the back of the thigh. It doesn't have to be complicated. The important thing is to be conscious of it, feel where there is tension, where there is tightness, and stretch those areas. What have I discovered? Already after a few minutes of stretching, not only am I physically relaxed, but mentally I am in a better state of mind. My mind is no longer overwhelmed, and focusing on my body takes me out of my head. It's like hitting the reset button. I feel more connected to myself and ready for whatever awaits me, whether it's going back to sleep or starting my day. Honestly, most of us don't give our bodies the attention they deserve. We spend our days sitting in front of screens, crouched over, cut off from our physical senses, and then wonder why we feel stressed. Stretching at 3 a.m. is your chance to break this cycle. It's a moment to reconnect with your body, release tension, and respect the vessel that carries you through life. This small act of self-care can have a huge impact on your physical and mental well-being. So the next time you wake up at 3 a.m., don't stay lying down. Stand up, stretch, and feel the tension disappear. It's not just about flexibility or fitness. It's about creating space to reset, clear your mind, and prepare for the day ahead. And trust me, you'll thank yourself for it later. The next time you wake up between the 3rd and 5th hour of the morning, don't see it as a curse, but see it as an opportunity. Those quiet hours could be the one deciding factor you didn't even realize you needed. Reflect, stretch, and if you feel stuck in the same old routine, remember, you'll be ahead of the game by using these precious moments to reset. Life doesn't wait for the perfect moment. Sometimes the best moments happen when the world is asleep. What will you do with your hours of the morning?